most important question I had to address for myself was, how do I want to invest my life?
Yeah.
So not just how do I want to invest my money, but I realized that the most valuable asset that I had was this life, which was finite. And I had to consider, how do I want to invest my life?
Hello and welcome to the Impact Insiders podcast, a podcast that explores real-life examples of people and organizations that are making an impact. My name is Angello and I'm the analyst here at Relative Impact. Today we'll have the privilege of welcoming Malcolm Johnston, director and founder of Angello, which was founded in 2008. Malcolm's areas of expertise are vision setting and strategic planning. He has years of experience in the investment and wealth management industry and was the CEO of a specialist investment management business. He also has over 30 years of experience in frontier markets and communities, building NGO, enterprise development, impact investment projects, and advised companies around the world. Angello are a group of highly motivated investment and business professionals with a wealth of experience in civil society projects who care deeply about social transformation. Angello is focused on enterprise-led development in frontier markets. Their purpose is to see building of enterprise ecosystems with their local partners so that businesses can grow, meaningful jobs can be created, and transformation can be seen in lives, families, and communities. Relative and Angello are in partnership together and have worked on a number of projects related to enterprise-led development, engaging with impact investors and NGOs, and assisting entrepreneurs on their journeys to establishing growth in their projects. Hi Malcolm, how are you?
I'm super. Thanks, Anelli. Nice to see you.
Thanks for joining us today on our Relative Impact podcast. Really great to have you on here, and we look forward to just getting your knowledge and expertise on your journey in the frontier markets and ecosystem. To start off with, I would just really interested to find a fun fact about you. So I know that you've traveled many different parts of the world, seen many different people, been exposed to different cultures and cuisines. As someone who's still very much looking forward to seeing the globe as a whole, what would you say has been your most exciting experience having visited all those different countries? Like if you had to pick one out, what would it be?
Well, first of all, the one fun or interesting fact is that I'm based in Ireland. So right now I'm in the green fields of Ireland, out on the western extremity of Europe. This is an interesting place to be born and to grow up, and my family was based here, and it's a really interesting place to live, but to travel out of. I've had the privilege, so I ran a business here in Ireland, but I also had the privilege to travel a lot, then a lot into the developing world. And Ireland is a great place to do that from, because we're not a big country. And many places that I went to, they couldn't believe that my country is so small and kind of insignificant, and in some ways insignificant. I think Ireland's been a really interesting country over the years, its history and its impact on the world. Actually, I think we've probably punched above our weight, but we're a small place, and that has actually quite an advantage, so that many places that we go to, the size of Ireland is smaller than the cities that I'm visiting. And in some ways, then you're not a threat. You're not some kind of representing some colonial power that is being used to, going kind of influentially around the world. So yes. Ireland's quite a cool place to be based. Coming from where I am in the north of Ireland, and Ireland as a whole, it's not that many decades ago that Ireland was, very largely a developing nation, racked with conflict, poverty. Yeah. So we kind of know something about what it's like to be a frontier nation and frontier communities, and we're still very much, trying to learn how to live with conflict and all of that. So I think that probably has given us a bit of an understanding to some degree, and an empathy with some of the problems that the nations face that we go to visit. Having been a lot of places, the thing that stands out the most transformation that I've seen happening in individual lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the bit that excites me the most, to watch what happens when individuals, and my passion from I was a teenager was to work with young people.
Nice.
And in some way or other, I probably spent most of my life finding a way to do things that could impact on young people and with young people. But I've always had a real passion to see young people reach their full potential. And I realized that so many young people haven't had the chance to do that because of the circumstances that they were born into. And I saw that often as the kind of the soil that the seed tried to come up out of.
Yeah.
And I saw so often that the growth was so limited according to the type of soil, the opportunity to grow, the nurturing and all of that stuff. And I'd say by far the thing that's been exciting is to watch how young people particularly can flourish when they have the opportunity to really fly. And I think that the potential in people is pretty evenly spread. I think that the opportunity to realize that potential is very unevenly spread. And so I think I've been most excited to watch particularly young people coming from really difficult beginnings in their families, or maybe the lack of a family completely, to see how, given the opportunity, they could fly. And that stands out by miles.
So Malcolm, I was just listening to your response now, and you said that you have been doing this has been your drive and your passion since you were at a very young age, wanting to see people grow that seed inside them, even though they come from difficult backgrounds. I just wanted to know, like, what was that initial seed in your heart, in your values or drive that led you to have so many years of experience in trying to develop frontier markets, working in that space? What was that drive to develop Angello, to found Angello, to direct Angello as well? What was that seed that grew inside of you that wanted to see those frontier markets and communities grow?
It's a great question. My business was in the investment industry. So our business, we were financial advisors, wealth managers, and investment managers. So we managed investment portfolios for high net worth clients, and that was our business. So we were talking about investment a lot with our clients, and if we're going to guide people about their money, we have to understand what's important to them. What burns in them and what drives their decisions. And that was all to do with how they invested money. And I think that I had the benefit of growing up in a family where faith was important, and the challenge of life is more than just about the here and now. And I guess that gave me the advantage of having great role models of how to do life. And one of the big questions that I therefore was challenged to address very early in my career, when I was growing a business that was being successful, and I had the privilege of talking to lots of my clients who were a lot older, looking back, reflecting over their lives and so forth. And I realized that before I finished my 30s, that the most important question I had to address for myself was, how do I want to invest my life?
Yeah.
So not just how do I want to invest my money, but I realized that the most valuable asset that I had was this life, which was finite. And I had to consider, how do I want to invest my life? And we always often ask our clients this in their financial planning. We asked them to try to imagine that we kind of showed them this line of, to depict their lives when you're 20 years old, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. And we tried to, say to our clients, say somebody's 35 years old. We tried to say, imagine when you are 80 years old or 85 years old. and you're looking back over the course of your life, right? So it's kind of a journey of imagination.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's like, imagine you're 85 and you're looking back over what you've done with your life. So you've made the investment of your life and you're looking back over how you invested it. I had this great opportunity very early to say to myself, so what would be a good investment of life? How do I want to look back and say, no regrets, that was a good investment? And having been grounded in faith, Christian faith, was that gave me a great kind of set of guidelines to look at what would a good investment look like. And therefore I was very inspired by, various parts of the Bible that guided on what a good investment would look like. And that was never about personal wealth or personal. It was more about how can you give away your life, because through that comes multiplication. So for me, it was kind of very early on, I decided that I wanted to invest my life well, and therefore being concerned about the things that I felt God was concerned about, then that would be a good investment of life. So that inspired me from pretty early on. And so I wanted to build a really excellent business that could be a great service to our clients, and to be really a positive influence in the business community. But the business also gave me a platform then to go and be involved in other types of projects. First in inner city Belfast, where I was living, and then out around the world. And the business gave me that platform, both in terms of having money, our profits to put into great projects, invest into other people's lives. Mm-hmm. And it gave me the freedom to go travel and also be involved. So that's kind of what inspired me. It really was about, how do I want to invest my life, and evaluating the different options for that, and watching what other people had done with their lives, and seeing that actually living to accumulate wealth was hardly ever particularly satisfying.
Mark, just thinking about, obviously, your passion for working with people in growing communities, seeing how their lives and trajectory go from having been in those circumstances, and then propelling to actually realize their full potential. My question is from your experiences, what has been the most thing that communities require to actually grow those markets and those communities, for them to have those experiences, to have those opportunities, be able to go from their current circumstances and to be able to grow and branch out and realize their potential? What is actually required to help the people in those situations?
I mean, I grew up in a generation that if, for example, if you cared about poverty, then you went with a kind of aid mentality, with a kind of savior mentality, going from the West into the developing world, and bringing solutions. So I cared about people who had no hope, no opportunity, and I wanted to go and fix it. I wanted to go and do something about it, which wasn't altogether a bad thing, but I kind of went with my solutions. It was like, yeah, I understand what you need. Let's figure out some strategies. Let's gather the resources and go and start stuff that we were driving. So, right from early on, I was going first into Eastern Europe, actually, just after the fall of communism. Mm-hmm. And one of the first places I went to was Ukraine. And I was in Ukraine many times, helping to build projects there for children and young people. But it was very much the aid model. It was a lot of drive from the West, the resources, the money, it was like emergency intervention as aid, and it has its place, as emergency intervention. But the aid model, through, let's say, not-for-profit activity,
Yeah.
was the only strategy that we understood. And so we brought the solutions, and many times, in many ways, the partners that we had in various countries were operators. We were the drive, they were the operators. We ran not-for-profit type activities. So we did a lot of work with street kids. And I really cared about that stuff. Like I cared about it deeply. I really wanted to see, how do we do as much as possible to help pick kids up off the street, and give them, a day center to come to day by day, to be fed, to be loved, to, get in off the street. And so it was a pretty typical not-for-profit type model. And I thought that was the right way to do it. And we tried to scale that as much as possible. And we, used the profits from our business and other people's businesses. And yeah, we kind of drove that kind of strategy. And that was okay for a while. And then I began to realize, so I just had this kind of like double life of where in one part of my life, I drove a business, we made profit, we made investments, through our business. And if that was successful, then we took the overflow from our profits as donations. And we took the donations to the 2/3 of the world that, that wasn't doing business and wasn't doing investment. We took donations. Okay. And people like me went from this part of the world with our donated money and went into this part of the world and ran charities. So I kind of had this double life of, here I was a business and investment professional, here I was a charity worker. And I remember very clearly being in Moldova, out in Eastern Europe, one of the poorest countries on the fringes of Europe, where we were running a lot of these programs for street kids. And we visited one of the day centers that where like 25, 30 kids were coming in, getting fed and all of that. And there was a little girl called Esther. And I'd watched her. I had a privilege of visiting these places. So I watched her, and she was just so bright, and she had an amazing light in her eyes and a smile. And I just kind of watched her in this group of kids, and she was playing and all of that. And it came time for the kids all to go home, and we got back in the car to go back to the city. And as we were driving away, these stories still make me cry. As we were driving away, Esther was sitting on the side of the street, the side of the road. And it was dark, it was cold, it was wet, and she was sitting there. And I said to one of the people we'd been working with, "Why is Esther not going home?"
Yeah.
And she said, Esther doesn't have any home to go to. And if she did find one of her parents, she's just going home to abuse. And it was like a light. I kind of thought, these charity projects are okay, but they're not enough. If I care about these kind of kids, what they really need is a parent with a job who is at home. And that was like it was like, so
a big realization moment.
Yeah, it was. And it was like I would call it a God moment of you're just looking at this the wrong way. You're too limited in how you're thinking. And the challenge of God to me at that time was, if you really care about these kids, it has to be about job creation for adults, so that families stay together, and kids have a better environment to grow up in, to keep going to school and all of that stuff.
And it's continuous and consistent, and there's a structure there.
Yeah. And it was like, and charities can't do that. And I began to realize that this other side of my life, which was being in business and in investment, was actually what I needed to think about for this 2/3 of the world that had just been getting charity money. And that really was the birth of Angello. It was like, so what would need to happen to completely rethink development and proper opportunities for kids and young people? It has to be about job creation, and that has to be about stimulating the small and medium-sized business sector in these kind of frontier nations where there was hardly any economic development going on. and there certainly was no investment coming into these countries. And I knew that from my industry, that none of the kind of investment capital ever came into the developing world. The normal investment capital circulated in the rich world, and the only kind of capital that came across was charity capital. And I was like, I've got to really rethink this completely. And that was another stage then of kind of going from, thinking that charity was the right solution to thinking, okay, business is the right solution. And all along this journey, Anelli, we just made mistakes. When I summarize some of this stuff, it sounds like, maybe we were really smart to figure things out, or, think everything we did worked. It kind of feels in hindsight that almost nothing we did worked. We were always experimenting and trying to find the right way to do things. But I think typically you only find things by making mistakes.
Exactly.
We made a lot of mistakes. And particularly when we started Angello and started to think about business development, we made a lot of mistakes in terms of how to do that. And I think where I've got to now is that it's very easy to change the strategies from being, let's say, aid-led to what we would say now is enterprise-led development. But it's very easy to do it the same way, in that, we come from the West, we've got all our smart answers, we figured it out, we've got strategies, maybe we've even raised some investment capital to help stimulate business, but we come in the same way as West is best, and we come to drive our solutions because we care, or because we're arrogant. Or I realized that, and this is probably one of the most encouraging things I've seen begin to happen, is that the vision for change and transformation in the frontier nations needs to be led by frontier nation leaders. The vision needs to be theirs, and these leaders need to be empowered, fully empowered to get on with it. And people like us from the West come to serve them and listen and respect and disappear at the right time. And so I think now what's critical, and we see this, we have the privilege of working in a lot of different places, that there's a new generation of, I would say, younger leaders emerging who really do have national vision. And I didn't see that before, mostly. And part of it was because of the way we in the West handled or managed our influence. But now the transformation and the vision can and will be driven by national level leaders who have vision, and the West needs to recalibrate and rethink how its part in that development.
It's quite an important lens to see it through, Malk, because I think also, as you say, it took a lot of learning from the mistakes that you have done. But I suppose if you hadn't gone through those curves, you would have never gotten to where you are now, and seen those differences of being aid-led versus enterprise-led, and actually understanding the needs of the different communities and how to invest in that. And I think, just off the back of that, I also just wanted to know, like, in your years of experience, what has been the most eye-opening change and development that you've seen in a community, or from your shift of being aid-led to enterprise-led? What has been the one thing that stands out for you and be like, yes, this is the difference that we made from the mistakes and the learnings that we've seen to the process that we are following now? We can actually see that this is working. What has been the most eye-opening change?
You ask good questions, Anelli. There, probably for me, I'll always come back to the most inspiring and eye-opening thing is to see transformation and flourishing in individuals' lives. There's amazing strategies, and you see all big shifts of trends and all that stuff, but ultimately to watch what difference these things make in individuals' lives, I think is ultimately the test of do they work or not? And I've kind of made it my job to not lose connection with young people in some of the places where we're working. So it's easy that the tendency can be to become very strategic, and it's all kind of high level, and you go and visit these countries, you're sitting in offices having conversations with smart people, and then you lose sight of what does this actually look like on the ground. Mm-hmm. So that if enterprise-led development was happening, well, what does that really mean when it trickles down into communities?
Exactly.
What does this mean? And so for me, probably the driver has never been the excitement of the bold new strategies. It's always been, how do I see impact happening in individuals' lives? And so I've stayed very close to some projects and the people that are actually in those projects. And so the thing that's always the most inspiring is to see that change happening. And I could tell you lots of stories of young people that I got to know when they were in their mid-teens. I had the privilege of being a co-founder of a children's home, mm-hmm. basically for young people. We bought a house and set up a project for young women coming from really difficult backgrounds to continue their education, get into a job, start a business. And I know all those young people by name, and I watch the change that happens in their lives when they complete their education. They have the opportunity to get training, get into employment, start a business. And that's by far the most inspiring stuff, and Ellie, to see what enterprise-led development looks like in the life of an individual. And they become empowered. They find dignity, their self-worth rises. They become great parents. They have kids, they get married, they have kids, they become great parents, and then the life for their kids is completely different. So that's the stuff that really excites me the most. I feel very passionate about people with no voice having a voice. And I realize that the way the world is skewed, potential is equally spread, opportunities not equally spread. And part of what happens then is that many people in some parts of the world, they don't have a voice in what happens in their country, in the strategies that other people might have for their country. They don't get a voice. And even in this whole world of enterprise-led development, there's a huge acceleration of this and how this is understood. Compared to, when we started Angello, there's hardly anybody was thinking much about enterprise-led development or impact investing, as part of that whole sector. There wasn't many people thinking like this. Now there's a real acceleration of people that are thinking about this, but the smart strategies can very often be driven again from the West. And it's very, very difficult for leaders and people in the 2/3 of the world that's not the West to have a voice, to shape the new global movement. And part of what I fear is that the West will try to, again, shape another movement globally. And I think this time around, it has to be entirely different. And we have the privilege of working with some really, really amazing leaders in, a whole variety of countries in the developing world. And I love to see their vision, their passion, their enthusiasm, their convening power in their countries.
Yeah.
And there's now an opportunity, I think, for these leaders to have a voice on the global stage. And I think that one of the things that we in Angello really care about and want to see happen is that the people who previously haven't had much voice, that they get a voice and they get to share their vision and to guide much more what happens in their countries. And so there's probably something very much in me that loves to see the voiceless have a voice, and to shift that power balance into something much more that's about justice and equality. And I see that starting to happen. And as far as we can in Angello, we're going to really encourage that and do what we can to create the platforms and the space for amazing frontier nation leaders to have their voice and share their vision. And if we can do that and then disappear off the stage and have been part of creating a much more equal approach to development, then I think we'll feel quite like we've achieved something.
Yeah, because you're empowering them to actually grow their own communities by themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mark, I really appreciate your time today and your insights into, firstly, your career as an enterprise leader, as well as just the way you've touched people's lives and see them grow from a young age in developing nations to people who are actually empowered to be able to take their own futures into their own hands and grow that. So it's been, for someone who is still a young individual in myself, I find that very encouraging to take that forward as not being someone who serves himself, but how can I serve others as well? And I think that's also the motto for Relative Others. How can we help others, improve what they want to improve in?
Yeah.